Today's story is called The Sandpiper and the Whale. One day, there was a little sandpiper at the beach, walking and walking. As the water came up, he would go up the beach, and when the water would go down, he would go down the beach and pick for something nice to eat. At the same time, there was a whale, lying in the water, very quietly, very peacefully, looking. And he saw that little sandpiper going down the water, and then as the water came up, him going back and going down and going back and going down and going back. And he said, "Oh, you creatures of the sky, you are so scared." And the little sandpiper, who was walking up and down and up and down, he stopped and he said, "Well, you are wrong. It's you, creatures of the sea, that are scared." And the whale said, "No, it's you, creatures of the sky, that are so scared." And said, "No," says the little sandpiper, "it's you, creatures of the sea, that are so scared." And the two started fighting. And the little sandpiper said, "I will show you. We, creatures of the sky, are good." And he called a lot of birds. He called big birds and small birds. He called the hummingbird. He called the seagulls. And they flew in the sky. Whew, 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 whew. And they flew up and down and all around. And they said, "We, creatures of the sky, are so strong. We are not scared." And the whale said, "Oh, let me show you." And he called the little fish, and he called the bigger fish. He called the dolphins, and they were jumping and jumping through the waters, and the waves were becoming big, and they were going woof and woof and woof. And they said, "Look, we, creatures of the sea, are strong." And the sandpiper, who was still going up and down and up and down, he said, "No, no, no! It's we, creatures of the sky, that are strong." And he called more birds. He called the buzzards and the eagles. He called the owls. He called all the birds that he knew. He called and they were flying in the sky and flying and flying. And he said, "Look, we, creatures of the sky, are so strong." And the whale, he looked, and he said, "No, it's we, creatures of the sea, that are so strong." And he called more dolphins, and he called his cousins the sharks, and he called the seals, and he called the crabs, and they were going up and down, and the waves were big and going left and right and left and the little birds, they were going brr and brr and brr and brr. But they were not going to give up. And the birds, the little sandpiper, he called more birds. He called the flamingos, and he called the pelicans, and the whole sky was full of birds, dark and covered with wings, and it was scary. Now, the whale, he called all the creatures of the sea, and he said, "We have to do something. We have to show them that we are strong." And they talked for a long time. And then he said, "Let's go and eat the sand, all the sand of the earth, so they have no more place to rest." And the whales and the dolphins and the seals and the big fish and the little fish and the crabs, they all opened their mouths and they gobbled up all the sand. And the little birds were going brr, 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 brr. And said, oh no, we have to have a meeting. We have to have a meeting. And they all sat down and they said, we have to do something. Our sand is going. We have to show them that we are strong. And they said, let's drink the water. So they have no more water. That will show them. So all the seagulls and the owls and the buzzards and the flamingos and the pelicans and the big birds and the small birds and the little sandpipers, they gobbled up and they drank up and drank up more water and more water. And the whales and the sharks and the seals and the dolphins and the fish and the crabs, they were eating and eating and gobbling and eating and eating and gobbling up all the sand. And as the birds were drinking and the creatures of the sea, they were eating and eating and eating. Slowly, there was no more sand and there was no more water. And the birds said, there's no more water. The fish said, there's no more water. How can we live? And the birds said, the beaks are full of water. We are tired. The sandpiper saw the problem. And the whale saw the problem too. And the whale called the sandpiper and said, Sandpiper, we have to talk. And the sandpiper says, yes, this cannot go on. And the whale said, I see you, creatures of the sky, are strong. And the sandpiper said, yeah, we can see you, creatures of the sea, are also strong. And the whale said, but if we fight each other, we will all lose. He says, yes, said the sandpiper, we will all lose. We will all be gone. He said, the whale said, you are strong and we are strong. But if we respect each other, we will be stronger. Let's give you back the sand. And the sandpiper says, yes, let us give you back the water. And so all the birds spit out the water and all the creatures of the sea spit out the sand. And the birds had rest. And the fish and the creatures of the sea had a place to swim. And they nodded their heads. They said, we will not fight anymore. We will be friends. Thank you for listening to this story, The Sandpiper and the Whale. It's a very old story, and it's a story of our humanity, that when we fight each other, we all lose. And when we work together and support each other and respect each other, we will all be stronger. And this story is about a conflict, and it's a conflict of pride. And most conflicts can be solved, but the problem of pride is very hard to deal with. And in this story, the conflict escalates and it becomes a life and death situation. Now, the end, the whale and the sandpiper, they start to talk. And that is the first stop. The first step to solving problems. We have to learn to talk to each other. And so in conflict resolution, we have an A, B, C, D. A means ask, what is your problem? What can we do? B is brainstorm. How can we solve the problem? And C, choose one solution. And D is do it. So the A, B, C, D of conflict resolution. And in this case, the sandpiper and the whale, they talk. They say, we have a problem. He says, no, what can we do? He says, I'll give you back the sand. And the birds say, we'll give you back the water. And they do it, as simple as that. And this is a very good skill for all of us to learn in our lives. Also, when we deal with nature, we should give back their space. They will give back fresh air, clean water, and a beautiful environment for all the animals to live in.